Hi there, welcome to the human experience. And today I want to talk about a subject we'll all be aware of, and that is death. I've spent a large part of my life either contemplating, thinking about, or even being around death. And that's not to say that in a morbid way, it's just to be aware. And I think nowadays in society, and it might have been the case throughout the ages, that we kind of either shy away from death or, we struggle to understand it and process it, which is understandable, yeah? We don't really know what's going on. And, when you break it down, science and religion are trying to explain these things in their own way, or are explaining these things in a way, but it's still hard to get our heads around, yeah? And I feel like myself, it's important to have acceptance of death, and that's within yourself. So I have to understand and accept that one day I will die, and that is, yeah, it's heavy. It's heavy on your shoulders, it's heavy on your head, but also it's a kind of lightness to it as well, that what I'm experiencing right now will not go on forever. And in a way, I feel it can kind of be reassuring that whether life is going really well or really bad or in the middle somewhere, that ultimately it will come to an end. When I talk to my friends, when I've talked to family members, it can be difficult, but also some of my friends are people I surround myself with. They're very open to understanding this. Even people I've worked with, I've spoke about this. And again, it's more in a kind of awareness way, not a like, why is this going to happen? Why me? Why this person? So yeah, I think acceptance is really important. And I know people, this is a very sensitive subject, and they might be going through experiencing a very near loved one, relative, friend, work colleague, or whatever, who has passed away, and it's like it makes you feel angry, it makes you feel upset, but allow them emotions to bubble up inside you. But then once they dissipate, once they go away, what is left then? What is left if we truly grieve and mourn someone for long enough? What benefit does it have for us and anyone around us, especially if it's bringing our mood down and our energy ourselves? And I always think in a more comforting way, like whoever that loved one is that you are missing and really want in your life and are really sad about losing, would they want you to feel that way? And would they not want you to have a happy and a good life even after they're leaving this place, this realm? Even in that with death, like, see it as a transition that is always taking place. Think of all the lives that have come before us and all the lives that are to come after us, and just that is a cycle. You can't have one without the other. So another way of looking at it there that I'm touching on is that death is like the renewal process, that new life will come in. So just as we celebrate a newborn, we must maybe, instead of having so much sorrow, celebrate the life of a lost one, of someone who has died. And therefore, it makes it more of a less resistance, less friction towards the inevitable, because it's going to happen anyway, right? Another thing that I've thought about when I'm thinking about this topic of death is reincarnation, and the fact that maybe, like some of the teachings in certain religions, that we are reincarnated. Now, the conclusion I've kind of come to myself and talking to others and reading up things is that maybe it's not reincarnation as in it's attached to your karma, or it's attached to a kind of age, like a golden age or whatever, that you're going to ascend or you're going to descend because of some reason, but more like it's not even you that is reincarnated, but that your energy is reincarnated. So what I understand from some teachings is that, yeah, karma might come into play, you pass away, and depend if it was good or bad, your next life will be good or bad. Now, the reason I struggle with that is that it's the judgment aspect of it. Like, and when I look at other things like animals, like, and someone says, oh, you've lived a bad life, so you're going to come back as a snail. Why is it so bad to be a snail? Like, why should we judge them as a lesser, more inferior kind of being? Because they might be experiencing things on their level that is it's not about advancement necessarily, it's just a different experience. There's no better or worse, do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's why I struggle with the karma aspect, and also the fact that it's a self. Like, I'm not sure if we have a soul or not. I'm not sure if we have lived a past life or not. But what I feel in my kind of instincts is that we don't carry on necessarily, but our energy carries on. And that even the energy that we are now and what I'm giving out as an output is just renewed energy, you know, from somewhere else. Another way of looking at it is like, imagine the fact that we're born and everything that has helped us grow is from outside of us. So from being a tiny newborn to a full-grown adult, we're generally consuming material, yeah, food. And that is giving us the energy to grow and the building blocks for us to grow our bones, our muscles, you know, our bodies to develop. And that has come from outside. And then a lot of it obviously is given back in the form of waste, you know, or like I say, when we then pass, I feel like we have that within us, that energy, and it might be taken in another way. So, for example, when you have these natural burial sites, the animals and the plants around are absorbing the nutrients of that person that has passed away. So, what a full moment of a cycle. Imagine that is helping to grow a crop that is then feeding someone that is alive, or an animal that is alive. Like, you see the full cycle there. I know in certain traditions it might be that they take the body to a certain place in the wild and allow the animals and nature again to consume it, whether that's decomposing or being like scavengers eating the bodies. And I know it sounds gruesome, but in reality, like, life is already geared up for that. You know, when you see some kind of roadkill, or you know, you see these Attenborough series, these animal shows where something has been killed on the savannah. What do you think happens? Why is there not just a massive pile of bodies all over? Because nature has already devised a way for, like I say, the scavengers, the decomposing animals, then are ate by animals that help the decomposition. So therefore animals that, like the maggots and the flies, to help it go back into the earth and renew. So yeah, death in that way should be a weight off your shoulders to say that it's coming to all of us and we should accept it. Now, what I wanted to touch on now is a little bit of my personal experiences with death. And like most people, I'm not saying this like it's unique to me. I'm just saying my experience and how I reflect on it. And it's that I have known people that have died, friends, family. You know, my grandma, I called her my nana, she passed away. My dad, he has passed away. And recently, I would say I've known of like work colleagues that, again, they're maybe not as attached as family and friends, but you see them day to day. So then all of a sudden you don't see them and it's a bit of a shock. And then there's your kind of in the background stuff, I say nowadays, where on social media, we're seeing posts every now and again of like RIP so and so, again, that you don't know, but they had an influence on you, whether it's an actor, a musician, some kind of public figure that you're like, wow, even happens in Britain with the royals. They're so prominent in society that for some people that loss is as big as someone who would have been even closer to them or who they actually met. So yeah, it can be on different levels. Even if it is a close relative, you might not have the perfect relationship, and therefore it might not hit you as hard, but it's still gonna be something. You know what I mean? And I've known, obviously people I know that have had people close to them pass away, and we've had conversations, and it's that sometimes that process even of like going through the funeral and seeing their loved one when they've passed away, whether that's in the hospital or the chapel of rest, or not seeing them, gives them that closure of like, I've gone through this step and this step, and now I can accept that they're gone. And maybe they've dealt with certain things like their finances or their living accommodation and stuff like that. They might have sorted things, sold off certain items or whatever they've done, and they now can accept that they've gone. Even a thing like scattering the ashes and stuff like that. So yeah, when I've experienced these things, for example, my dad, to be honest, it wasn't a shock because we knew he had a terminal illness. It was to do with the cancer he got, which was pancreatic cancer, and it had spread to his lymph node system, and basically then that's what made it terminal, because they couldn't stop that and they couldn't operate or do anything. So yeah, he had I would say from knowing he was kind of ill, it was just over a year to then him passing away. And in that way, we had a bit of preparation. But for me personally, sorry, my dad, he wasn't around for me growing up. So I didn't have the closest of bonds. But I said this to a friend that my dad passing still felt like I'd lost a part of me. Um, and that things would never be the same. And that was just because they are connected to you. I've never known a time without my dad in the world. And obviously I was born, and then I enter and introduce myself to the world, and people know of me, and then it's like the cycle continues then of like my dad passed, now I live for so long, and I have a son who's only 2.5, and he will know me if things go the way they normally go, that I will pass and he will not know a time without me being in the world because I was here before him. In that way, you have to kind of make sense of it all, make sense of death, which is very hard. And what brought me, I would say, more closure and kind of peace was that I did get to talk to him a little bit before he passed away. Maybe go over a few things of like how his life panned out, how my life is panning out, because obviously he didn't know what was to come. And yeah, he has missed out on things like grandchildren from my siblings and myself, certain, key moments in life like birthdays and, getting a job or something like that. So it has been tough. But one thing I'd say is that what brought me comfort, is that my dad was in his late 60s, and I felt that, as the saying goes, he had had a good innings. So, it's a cricket term there that if you get so many runs, or at this point of talking about life, if you get so many years in, then you've had a life at least, yeah? It's not as tragic as a young person dying. And I'm not saying that to take it away, because like I say, he's missed out on a lot of things that would have been amazing for him to actually be there for. But I'm just saying that to be more unselfish of myself is to say, if he was suffering and he was in pain, why does he have to wait for my son to enter the world, his grandchild, and be around just to witness that if he's not in a good place himself, if he's suffering? And yes, ideally he didn't even get the cancer and he just carried on to his 80s and 90s and witnessed it all. But that just wasn't the way his life was meant to pan out. And sometimes if we're honest with death, to say that when it comes, then there is no wrong time and there is no right time. Yeah, there is just a time. Much like being born, we don't say, and we think it sometimes, but we don't say, I wish they weren't born then. I wish they could have been born a bit later. Now, a parent might say that because they might think of a circumstance where, you know what, financially it wasn't right, or the relationship wasn't right. So we didn't really, this kid was unplanned, is what would be said. But we can equally say that for death, that it is unplanned, and therefore there is no right and wrong time. And much like becoming a parent, as I have done, I just have to, once it happens, that's it. You have to be responsible for that human being. And I feel that with my dad's passing, that once he passes, now I have to step up and be responsible myself, and maybe use whatever teachings, good or bad, he has instilled in me or not instilled in me, as best I can to navigate my way through the world and my life, and then pass that on to my son. Yeah, and a lot of this is in hindsight sometimes. That's why even on this channel when I speak, it's me wanting to pass things on, thinking sometimes of what would a younger me want to hear? What would a younger me want to know, want to be reassured about? And it's just that death is not the end. And that brings me on to the memory aspect of it. I have, for my dad, not so many, but for my friends, for even work colleagues sometimes, I have memories that are good memories, and that's why I miss that person or they had an impact on me. And with them memories, I think we should just cherish them, use them as that fuel to carry on, whether it's in their honor, in their name, or as a kind of tribute to them. Just live the life the best that you can, and honor them in that way of having a good life yourself. And again, whatever you believe, if you're going to meet them in the afterlife, if you will just, like I say, go into the ether and just become this mix of energy and life force, then whatever it is, you know that they're kind of around in a way. Because again, when people die, we don't strap them to a rocket and send them off into space. Their essence, their body, maybe you could argue even their soul is around, yeah? And it might not be that we can even contact them, because this is what I feel, again, the way the human psyche is, we're so attached to people and things that when they die or we lose them or they break, we can't handle it. We get angry or whatever. But the point is that maybe we can't contact the dead. And the way I came to this conclusion is that we don't really look to contact someone who has not been born yet, yeah? We only seem to concentrate on contacting those that have passed. And I feel that's because we're attached and connected to them, that we don't want to let them go and we don't want to accept the reality. And that the reason we don't seek to contact people that have never been born is because we've never met them. We've never built a connection or an attachment. And therefore, we're not like, okay, I'm waiting for my friend now to have his son, and I'm so upset that he's not here and I want to speak to him now, so I'm going to go to someone, they're going to help me speak to him, a medium or whatever. Like, no, because you're not connected. And it should be, I feel, as hard as that is to say, that you don't need to speak to someone who has passed. Yes, okay, internally or even out loud, you can say stuff to a loved one because you've had that experience of them and you want to maybe process how a conversation would go with a friend. Like, oh, I've had it where a friend that lived on my street that I grew up on, we went to a certain concert of a music artist called Lupe Fiasco. And I'll never forget that concert, partly because I love the artist and partly because it was a shared moment with this friend that has passed away. And he was quite young when he passed away, so it was quite tragic. But what I find comfort in is that anytime this artist releases new music or I have the opportunity to go see him again in concert, I'm always it's gonna rekindle that memory of my friend. And it's also like, in honor of him, I'm absorbing that music. And even in my head, when I'm kind of reviewing, was that a good album or not? I'm kind of like, what would he think? What would he think of it? And what conversations would we talk about? Like, oh, that line was brilliant, or the way that track mixed into another track and changed. was like so clever. You know, the conversations we would have had. So you can kind of talk to someone in that way, but I'm not asking him to come back for my sake to enjoy a moment or share a moment. We've shared it, we've had them moments, and if it was only like a few moments, then so be it. If it was lots of moments, then great. But whatever it was, just cherish that, and use that as a way to move forward. So yeah, I think that's it for now on death. There's never a final thought or final thing I could say on it, and I will definitely do other videos around death, and the meaning and the feelings around it and the emotions. But for now, yeah, I just wanted to touch on that for people that are going through it, as in with other people around them, or wanting to help someone else with it. If they could listen to this and maybe try and make sense of it, I think processing death is very important, and that just to embrace it in a way that is, we don't want it, we're not encouraging it, but when it comes, and that there's a peace in that, and that I think it was an Oscar Wilde quote that was saying, what could be more kind of, I'm just paraphrasing, but like, what could be more peaceful than being laid into the earth and having the wind blow above you and the grasses grow tall and just be at one with the earth again, is I think what the quote was getting at. I will put the quote in. Let's just say I was a little off with the quote, but it goes like this. Death must be so beautiful, to lie in the soft brown earth with the grasses waving above one's head and listen to silence, to have no yesterday and no tomorrow, to forget time, to forget life, to be at peace. But that's kind of what I got from it anyway, the peace of being at peace and resting in peace. So that's it for now, guys. See you next time on The Human Experience.